Thanks, Bernie. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeremy Ambrose. I'm a VC partnership manager at Zendesk. But I wear a few different hats, and I'll be using those different hats as we go through this. I think one other thing I kind of draw on quite a lot is the experience of my own startup and my own exited journey. And in a space that's not necessarily a building what you call a traditional startup, because we actually built an accelerator. So we started in 2011. We were at our full tilt, kind of operating with over 1,000 entrepreneurs coming through our doors every year in some level of support. And we sold that to NatWest in 2018, retained the majority of the IP quite cleverly, and continued on and started to push forward with our own accelerator. Currently, I'm non-operating director, so I've stepped out of that now in the into Zendesk. But that accelerator is now operating across the globe, sub-Saharan Africa, Costa Rica, Bermuda, all over the place. But our core focus right now is the UK Space Agency Accelerator Program, actually putting businesses in space, which is so cool. And I've learned so much along the way. So yeah, that's that side of things, which is why I've had so much experience of helping startups grow. Worked with my first unicorn who just got unicorn status, which was amazing. But the other side of things that I do is very much around Zendesk. I partner with VCs, with accelerators, with technology companies, just to kind of add value and help to any startup wherever they are in their journey. Help overcome that inflection point, that key part where you are, where you're asking that core question, how can I get you over that? Yes, we have a great offer that we give people as well of Zendesk, but I'm not a salesman. I don't have a sales quota, so you won't hear me selling Zendesk today. It's very much about value add. So that's me in a nutshell. And my core expertise is around CX. And I guess, what do we mean by CX? Anything to do with customer experience, where they first hear about you and your business, all the way through to when they actually leave and go on to somebody else, or they've solved their need, and they don't need you anymore. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Jeremy has also been to probably every conference that ever exists in the entire world. He's always traveling. So not one for right now, but if you're ever like, is it worth going to Web Summit? Is it worth going to Slush? Shall I go to Las Vegas for this expo? Ask him, because he's been to all of them. And I'm sure he'll have some tips on the best way to spend your time and money if you're thinking about using conferences as a customer onboarding idea. But we're not going to talk about any of that today. We're just going to talk about kind of best ways to, I guess, speak to your customers or potential customers to extrapolate the most value from those conversations, so you can put them back into product development or go-to-market strategy or whatever it might be. So one of the things that's come up, I think we had it as a question last week, was just about the most effective questions you could ask customers, or potential customers, will use either, to uncover what the underlying problem is that they're actually solving. And it was asked to a product manager who didn't have necessarily that much experience with it. So do you have any thoughts on, if you can do either a questionnaire, or maybe if you've got 30 minutes and you can do a Q&A, how would you lead that conversation so you can get the most out of the conversation?
It's the broadest question, and there's no like, hey, here's a silver bullet and go and ask this question, right? Which unfortunately I'm going to disappoint a few people by saying that. But I think the core point is, right, the question you've got to ask yourself is, what insight do I need to de-risk my next move? At what tipping point do I know that customers are going to buy, and then for how much is it going to cost them to actually buy my product or service? So there's lots of different questions you should be asking. If I was to boil it down into that, what are great questions to ask? I think, we're all going to say open questions, not led by your own biases, that lead you to lots of conversation that is going to allow you to pull insight. I guess one thing I'll say on that is that when we do Q&As with potential customers or existing customers, we have a tendency to ask a question, sit back and listen, and actually not do anything with that. So I think measure it, record it. We've got some great tools out there already that can kind of pull out sentiment out of answers, and then you can look at, okay, so I've had 10 conversations now, and one word cropped up every single time, and that is time, for instance. Okay, so we're now in that zone of, right, what's the value proposition? And when I say the value proposition, I mean, well, what's the benefit, or how are we helping somebody solve their needs or wants or and desires, in the best way? That our value proposition is our promise to our customer to deliver benefit. And if they're talking about time, then that's a value proposition. We can then kind of come back and go, right, well, value proposition for us is time, to them is time. Well, what are we doing around minimizing the time to value that we have in our customer, onboarding them as quick as possible? So there's this kind of whole back and forth of, well, it's probably how you ask the questions more than what specific question you're actually asking. There's a great book out there. I'm sure you've all heard of it, but the Mom Test gives you a great idea of those kind of open-ended questions to ask. Yeah, one other thing I'll chuck in there. I mean, the answer doesn't exist inside your head. Too many coders out there, too many people who've built a business from their own problem or their own ideas. They rely on their own head to decide on the next way forward, right? And you can't do that. Don't go away, code in your bedroom or code in your garage or whatever, and then come out and do that whole ta-da moment, and then nobody wants it. We call that having an ugly baby. You've got to actually go and find out if people like your baby and like they want your baby, and how do they want it presented, and all of that. So it's asking those open-ended questions to get the level of insight that you need to de-risk the next move, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
I
And
hope that kind of, yeah, goes a little bit into
if we're
kind of,
calling this the kind of discovery phase, so
yeah.
let's say you haven't actually got any customers yet and you're still just speaking to people, I guess in your experience, would you say the best thing to do is have, I don't know, 10 conversations where you actually don't have any agenda really, and you go in with a couple of really open questions, and maybe you start seeing that time is coming up often, and then you structure a few more questions, and then, you know, speak to another 20 people, but then you've got a little bit more of a kind of idea in your head of where the conversation might go, and you kind of like finesse it with a different group of people every time? And how would you use surveys or questionnaires, if at all, in that, if you're worried about, I don't know, your B2B and it's going to be difficult to find a constant stream of customers or potential customers to speak to?
Yeah, okay, let's take that for the first part of that in terms of customer discovery, because if we're in that customer discovery phase and we're not through to validation yet, you know, it's a cyclical model, right? It's just feedback loops that are going to give you enough information to move into that validation position to say, yes, I've validated a customer. Yes, somebody wants this product or service. And then on top of that, we know there's a need, right? And then we can move into kind of company building and beyond. Now, that feedback loop comes with a series of experiments. Within those series of experiments are conversations with potential customers, customers of competitors, customers of people that are conversations with people who are solving a similar need or solving a similar problem elsewhere. And I think they're all in there. Yes, it's a cumulative thing, as you were saying there, Purdy, in terms of, right, we'll go and ask a few questions, open-ended, have a conversation, see what we get out of it. That then gives you an informed structure or a bit of insight that's going to help you develop that core or the next level question, which is going to help you get to the answer that you require quicker. And you kind of go up that level of insight that leads you to great questions. And the only way you can do that is by listening, right? It's opening it's asking a question and listening. I think there are many ways of doing that, and surveys are a great way of honing your question set and seeing what gets the best interaction with that question. Not exactly, you know, what I'm saying is not exactly the answer to that question is what you need. It's how you ask the question. And if you A/B test this very similar questions in one way versus the other, and you get a better response rate to one, all right, well, let's move over and use that question next time. What's the structure of that question? And therefore, how can we use that in a different way to get a bit more insight from somewhere else? So consistently going in those feedback loops, gaining insight, moving up the ladder of question traction, I guess, to help you again deliver solutions to people's pains. So yeah, that's where I would kind of start. If you this whole customer discovery and lean startup movement, Steve Blank and all of his pals, Eric Ries, there's a whole lot of people out there doing it, but in his customer client development model, I mean, it sums it up perfectly. So go and have a look at Steve Blank's customer client development model, understand how to form those tests, those lead assumptions. What's my biggest assumption right now, and how do I test it? And then go off and continue in those in those feedback loops and experiments, which will help you move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, what you said in there might answer that other part 3 of my 3-parted question. But if you are B2B and yeah, your customer is like the finance director at some massive enterprise, I guess you could talk to someone that's solving a similar problem in a different space as part of what you were saying. It's not just customers, it's competitors or people that are doing something similar. But how would you go about that if you can't get access to your customers?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you're looking for people who influence your customer as well, right? So if you are looking for the finance director of Google, probably difficult to go after. But looking at that persona of finance director, large tech, whatever that might be, you can understand where in that journey that they'll get up, they'll go to work, they might be at the local paddle club, they might, it's about understanding the journey of that customer and where we can intersect on that journey to ask them a core question. And that also means that, right, who influences them? Who do they have conversations with that we can then influence? And looking at those circles of influence around that customer persona of the finance director at Google, we can then start to form a strategy of intersecting them on their journey to ask them a core question. So if you can't get to your core customer, look at who else is trying to solve this need, who else influences the person that is your core customer, and then go after them and have a conversation with them. You're looking for warm intros into these people as well. And I'd also suggest that at an earlier stage, you probably don't know who your core customer is, and who that core customer might be in 2 years' time, and actually what your product or service might look like, because there's going to be a number of pivots. There's going to be another number of kind of ways to go around solving the customer's needs, and you have to be directed by that. So look at the sphere of influence, and I'd probably ask questions around there, seeing where you can get in on that journey to ask a core question. Yeah.
That's kind of links with the next question that I have, which is that some founders here don't necessarily know who their customers might be, or there's potential for the product to work in healthcare and in education and in finance. Yeah. So you're trying to validate potential routes to market to see which one has the most traction. So do you have any advice on how, I guess, the best way to ask the right questions when you've potentially got different segments or different groups of people that might need different things? And it might be that, again, you just go in open and just see what people say, but you've got such a finite amount of time as a founder, and there's so much competing for your attention. So what's the best way to do it efficiently?
Yeah, I think there's a few things in here. First off, customer segmentation. Customer segmentation comes down to understanding the value proposition that you propose to solve in each of the different core customer segments, right? That's a really bad way of saying it. Right. Let me try that again. So understanding the value or the set of benefits that you deliver to a customer, and they are going to be different. Every customer is different. Their journeys are different. And as I said before, some people might find that it's easy to use your product or service. Therefore, that time to value that they get is their core value that they drive from your product or service. The convenience factor of it also comes into it. the price over something else in the market that's also helping them solve their need. There's a whole load of different value sets that we have to look at, which will determine why somebody buys from you or why somebody will buy from you in the future. So I think first off, focus down in by asking customers, or I guess those potential customers, because we don't know who they might be yet, but understanding the value that you provide to them will then help you understand how to be in front of them in their journey. I'll give you an example. I'm trying not to give anything away here, but we worked with a space business, right? And they wanted to mine asteroids. Their whole purpose was to go up into space, mine some asteroids, and bring back loads and loads of ore from these or precious metals from these asteroids, and then sell it. A bit of an issue, because actually, if they brought well, they couldn't do it because their robots that they were producing to actually mine these asteroids were like this big, right? And you're not going to be able to lift off a whole load of diamond with like that size of thing. So what we were trying to get to them to do was, right, okay, so what's the on-Earth application of that? And then they looked at how their product was actually utilized. Their product was utilized in a harsh environment to scrape or to lift debris, but also to analyze with a visual way to see what was actually on the asteroid. And they produced a robot that did that stuff. So the question was to them, where else would that be useful on Earth? And we kind of came down to a few different areas and looked at different places. They're now looking at TfL, where we have to stop tubes from running when we want to send a 10-man team down to examine the roof of the tube of the tube. Well, they're now in there looking at that, analyzing it. The tubes are still running past, and they've just got their little robot on there doing it all. That's value driven for one customer segment. They're also doing chimney inspections. They're doing oil rig inspections now. They're doing dangerous volcano zones, going and exploring what the there's a whole load of different areas that they've now looked at that they can add value to. So a big roundabout way of going, right, what is the core function of what I do and what I do best in my organization, and therefore who's looking to solve that, and it's just a problem, it's not a solution, who's looking to solve that problem elsewhere, which will then hone you down into a customer segment, which you can then analyze, you can ask questions of, you can see who the competitors are, and all of that kind of stuff, to then be able to figure out, right, this is who I serve best, this is how many pains I solve for them, and therefore that's who I'm going to focus on first. And then, of course, you can go, okay, we've now nailed that market. Hey, let's just open up, pivot, Starbucks style. And actually, they went zoom out, zoom in, and then add coffee. But you got all the cakes and all that stuff. When they, they did a load of different things. But anyway, so that's what I would do.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really interesting story. What about if, okay, you figured out who your customer is, and I'll use Deliveroo because we just had Chai from Deliveroo, but there's actually 3 really important stakeholders for you to be able to solve the problem for your customer. So in Deliveroo's case, she was just saying that the customer is the restaurant, the drivers, and the kind of end user customer, and all 3 of them have to be happy at the same time in order for your product to be a success. So if that's the case, and you're servicing 3 different people, and if one of those doesn't work, then the whole business falls to pieces. How would you go pre-Deliveroo about speaking to customers and validating that it's the right thing?
Just say that one again. So if so Deliveroo have that kind of 3-sided model of value being derived for each person. They have to keep all 3 happy, right?
Yes. Let's say you were the founder of Deliveroo and it hadn't launched yet. What would you be doing with those 3 different stakeholders to validate that this is the right business for the right person.
Oh, the old chicken and egg as well, because which comes first on a multi-sided platform? Is it the buyer or the seller? You know, you have to have something to sell to be able to buy from,
Yeah,
and then
that's
that
the
kind of
follow-up
logistics model.
questions.
Yeah, okay, fine. Um, yeah, it's an age-old problem, right? So I think you've got to kind of boil it down. I'm going to use the Zappos example. You may have heard it before. One of the biggest online shoe sales. People, one of their straw models or their MVPs. He just went into the local shoe shop, and what he wanted to actually test was that people were wanted to buy shoes online and would buy shoes online. So all he did, he went into the shop and went, right, I would like to put some of your shoes online to test the core assumption that people would buy shoes online. And he took pictures of them, left all the stock in the store, and said, "I'll just come in and buy them off you, and then ship them off if people buy them." Um, so what he went out there, then put a website up, had the pictures of the shoes, and he would just go down to the local shoe shop, pick them up, and distribute them, and off they went. So he was understanding that there was a market on one side, there was the buyers, there was also the sellers on the other side, the shoe shops, and they could sell shoes in a different way on the seller side, but also the buyers could buy something differently on the other side. Looking at the value that they're producing on that then led him to build the biggest and most amazing online shoe retailer in the world from such a simple thing. But he was validating that each side wanted this in a separate way to then understand the value that he could increase and drive in each side of those segments. So if you have a multi-sided platform and you have different stakeholders across the board, you have to understand why they would use your product or service. You have to understand what the benefit is to them. Um, why would they want to sell shoes online as a seller? Well, actually, they're going to increase their sales, and you can help them prove that by selling their own shoes for them over here. So it's understanding that value that you drive for them. Now, if you then kind of I'm pretty sure Deliveroo didn't start with all of those three things in place at once. They probably, and I don't know their story, so you can help me out here. But I'm sure they probably did exactly the same thing. They went to some restaurants and said, "Hey, as the founders of Deliveroo, we'll deliver some of the food for you in a kind of a last mile fashion in a local area," and then expanded.
Yeah, I
That's
think Will Shu was doing the deliveries himself at the beginning
yeah,
just to prove that there was a market for it. So
yeah. That sounds about right. Groupon did the same thing. Uber are a brilliant example of that. They'll only go where the market is by seeing how many downloads they get in a certain area. So if you want Uber in your area and you don't have it just yet, then make sure everybody in all your neighbors will download it, because that's when they move in. There's a tipping point. And that's when they kind of cross the value threshold. There's enough value in that region to then move into it. And now that's exactly the same model, right? Okay, so we've proven that people want to actually buy food in the local area. They want it hot and they want it delivered to them within 15 minutes, whatever that might be. I don't know. All right, cool. So how do we do that quicker? 50 minutes. Sorry. How do we do that in 15 minutes? Okay, well, we need our own riders. We need our own delivery people, and that's when they start doing that. And they can add value in that last mile service. I think being able to segment those three areas, understanding the value that we provide to them, and then be able to do that more and do it better will give you give you a way. I think the other part of it is segmenting it and knowing what those three users need to be, or those three customers need to be, and then how to make them and keep them happy.
yeah.
And that's only going to come through insight and understanding and having constant conversations. If you've got less than 100, if you've got less than 100 customers right now, you need to be having a conversation with every single one of them. I would also suggest that all of the organization needs to be having those customer conversations as well, because you'll come in a completely different way to your CFO, to the delivery person, and gaining insight from a lot of different areas of that kind of diversity of mindset. They'll come at problems and challenges in a different way and certainly add value across the board. So make sure you do have a CX strategy that is led by everybody in the team, because that's when you're going to get the best insight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember everyone that we're going to ask you how many customers you spoke to in your weekly update at the end of the week. So take this week to ask some interesting questions. Okay, the next few questions hopefully will be a little bit easier for you, because this is assuming that you have customers, and it's best practice for how to maintain the relationship after you've already got them through the door, in order to maximize the lifetime value of the customer and all that good stuff that investors are going to want to see. So I think the majority of people here have probably heard of NPS, but are there any other ways of measuring customer satisfaction that you would recommend outside of that? And maybe just a quick one line on NPS for anyone that doesn't know.
Sure. Net promoter score, those people that are promoters of your business who are going out there, it's normally a score out of 10, and only the 9s and the 10s are promoters of your business. Anything under that is either apathetic or a detractor. So that's kind of an NPS score. You can quite easily measure it. Just stick in Google and they'll come with measurements of it. But it's done normally in a survey basis as an end question. Would you recommend us to a friend? So that's that NPS thing. And it's used across the board, but I would say don't use that in isolation. It doesn't give you enough information to actually work with. So there are a number of different areas that I'd look at. Actually, Purdy, can I share my screen very quickly?
Yeah. Let me turn it on. Yeah, you're good.
Because I hope everyone can see this. Let's just go in it. So putting together a presentation about how to actually put together a CX strategy. So 70% of startups don't have a formalized CX strategy, which really pains me, because when you start out, the first conversation you have has insight in it, and being able to measure that insight will then allow you to understand the route forward. And that comes through what I'm going to spend money on. What investors do I need? What price am I going to price? All of those kind of things. So when measuring and monitoring customer experience or customer engagement, there are a number of metrics that will help you lead towards your North Star. One of them being Net Promoter Score, which you can see at the top there. Next one is simple CSAT scores, customer satisfaction scores. How satisfied are the customers with your product, service, or interaction? Again, there's ways of measuring CSAT. Zendesk, the program software itself, it does it for you. Customer effort score. How much effort do I have to go to actually buy from you? Understand, like, how much effort do I have to go to get an issue resolved? A request fulfilled, you can see it there, a purchase returned or a question answered. So measuring that CES, the customer effort score, will help you determine how well you're doing in that area. Don't use these in isolation, use them together. Churn rate. When do people get off the journey of buying from you, or once after they bought from you, what point do they go off elsewhere? Understanding where they churn and then they don't become a customer is really important. The first contact resolution and average resolution time. So when somebody actually wants to buy from you or comes in and have a conversation with you, how long does it take you to actually respond to them? That's the first contact resolution. Then into that average resolution time, understanding how long it takes to actually solve a person's needs and get them back to value utilizing your product or service. So there's a number of different areas that I would look at in terms of building a CX strategy and measuring it. Now, why? So why would I actually measure all that stuff? The reason I would measure all that stuff is because retention is your best asset when it comes to building a business. I'll give you an example here. So if you increase your acquisition and your retention by 1%, you have a 3.9x better return on revenue in retention than you do in acquisition. Acquisition's getting harder and harder and more expensive, and it's 70% increase cost of customer acquisition to 2014, and that's on the increase. People can get value from a whole lot of freemium models, and therefore they won't pay for something. A lot of the core products and services that you provide, people can get for free. So it's understanding that core tipping point of when people have motivation to buy. Yeah, in fact, you know what? Duh, 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 duh. I'm just looking at the chat, sorry.
Yeah, this is the response to under, I'm guessing.
Yes, it is. It's just easier to show you. So here are the measurements. Let's slideshow this. Can everybody see this a bit better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So number of different things. We're talking about retention here. Brand trust, yes. Cross-sell opportunities, yes. This is why I would measure CX and understand it. 70% cost of acquisition. So customer acquisition cost has increased significantly, both within business to business and direct to consumer. So both your B2C and the B2Bs. 70% increase. There's a 60 to 80% lower product value. And consumer willingness to pay has declined 65% because they can buy those, they don't have to buy things. The core features are available for free through freemium models, through open source data stuff, so they can go and get all the value they need for free. And then if I increase acquisition or retention by 1%, what does that do? What does that look like on the revenue? 3.97x is return on revenue if I increase retention by 1%. So that's the stats and facts, right? So, but why? It's that retention thing. What you're trying to do is produce evangelists and promoters of your business that are going to take care of your marketing for you. I'm not saying switch off all channels of marketing or acquisition. That's not what I'm saying. What we have to do is do an amazing job of retaining customers because they become the marketeers for you. The first interaction that somebody will have with you or your business will not be directly through you. It'll be through somebody who's adopted this somewhere down the line, and they'll be having a conversation about how they've helped solve the pain that they had through what you do or what you provide. That kind of, if you've heard of Rogers adoption curve, um, looking at Rogers adoption curve, these are the early adopters that are going to be out there talking about you in that kind of call light. This is the early stage through to the late majority, which are then those kind of and laggards, which come way after all of those people. So if we can create early evangelists and we can create retention and marketing strategies through the people that we already have in our retention strategy, then we can build on company value. And we can then service it wider and wider and wider, and they become promoters of your business, and therefore you can build a company. So yeah, that's, I can't even remember the question, but it led to retention, how to measure, why you measure it, and all of that. But essentially, measure it, learn from it, gain the insight, and de-risk your next move, whatever that might be within company building.
I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll hand it over to the cohort. So if you do have a question for Jeremy, raise your hand now, and then we'll get to you after this. So what I guess everyone here is striving to be a global venture scalable big business unicorn, you know, that kind of thing. So what best practice have you seen that other unicorns or other huge businesses have adopted in terms of customer engagement or customer retention that you think the founders here could start applying now so that they're going to just figure it all out?
Yeah. Oh, easy. Yeah, no problem. Let's all become unicorns. Okay, so let's start with a few different trends that we've seen certainly in the market. We run a trends report every year at Zendesk, and it looks at our I can't remember how many customers we have at the moment, millions. But it looks at around 2.4 billion in data points and understands what people are doing within CX that that helps them build their businesses. So what I'm going to do, like, I'm going to break it down into that early stage and kind of middle stage. So 0 to 100, and then 100 to 1,000, and then why. So early stage, maybe before you've really got a customer or you've got a few customers, every question that's asked of you or every question that you ask of potential customers, you should be writing down and putting into what we call a knowledge base, right? That knowledge base is going to help you self-serve, or is going to help your customers self-serve in the future. It's building up those frequently asked questions. It's building up the understanding of people like to interact with us by watching a video about how to use this or how to get the best out of this. Or actually they would like a data sheet to go through to see if it's compatible with whatever. So formulating that.
I love a gadget. I love a gadget, me.
Sorry, Tim, there we go. Formulating that knowledge base is core from before you even have a customer. When you're actually on your journey to asking questions, you've got a few customers in that 0 to 100 bracket, we should be monitoring conversations wherever they take place. And we should, and I'm going to tell you this is what I see in those fast scalable businesses. They have a time in their diary across the C-suite to talk about customer. It's a linear approach. So those that are customer facing, shop front, whatever that might be, they're talking about customers at that meeting, as well as the CEO bringing his thoughts or her thoughts on it, as well as the CFO, as well as the CTO, as well as everybody's in that room talking about the customer. Because as I said earlier, that diversification of mindset allows us to come at problems in different ways and help solve the need of a customer better. We've got more heads around it. That's what we should be doing. So put that in the diary every week. If you miss it 1 week, then at least you've got it every 2 weeks. So putting that time in the diary to talk about the customer, what's going on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Don't just talk about great things, talk about the horrible things as well. Talk about the complaints that you've had. Talk about the rude words that you've been called to on email and all of that. That's really important at an earlier stage as well. The other point is measurement. Start measuring all of those things that we put up on this from a slide earlier on as well, and get connecting those conversations into one place. Get off your Excel spreadsheet or your Google sheet and start interacting with some kind of customer management solution that actually helps you have all those things in one place. Because as you scale, it's going to be harder to get off your Excel spreadsheet or your Google Sheets, whatever that might be. Connect it earlier, and have that incoming of customer conversation from a website, from a chatbot, from WhatsApp for Business, from email. Connect all that into one place so you have one view of a customer and how they've interacted with you. That's going to help you cross-sell and upsell. That's going to help you make that they feel welcome when they come to speak to you. What do I mean by that? I mean that when they ask you a question and you haven't had all those conversations that they've had in one before with you in one place, you don't know the context behind why they're asking that question. If you can turn around and have a quick read of the history of that customer and go, do you know what? I know why this person's asking this question. Hey, John, yeah, I can see that you've had an issue with this certain part of the journey before. How did you solve that before I did this? Blah, blah, blah. Brilliant. I feel welcome. I feel welcome on your platform, and therefore I'm going to give you a better CSAT. I'm going to give you a better CSAT score. I'm going to become a promoter. There's lots of different ways, but connect those conversations in one place so that you can see the history of that, so they feel welcome. When I also talk about connecting conversations, you have to meet your customer where they want to be met. If I want to talk to you via email, I want to be able to talk to you via email. If I want to talk to you via a chatbot, I want to talk to you via chat. I'm on WhatsApp for Business. I want to chat WhatsApp. You have to meet the customer where they are having those conversations. And when I come back to that, intersecting them on their journey and having a conversation with them on their customer journey, that's the level of understanding you need. Well, that finance director at Google is actually on WhatsApp, and he communicates with lots of his mates on WhatsApp. Right, okay, guess what? We need to implement WhatsApp for Business and talk to them in the way they want to be talked to. So 0 to 100, we need to be collecting those conversations, interacting with them, put time in the diary to actually talk about the customer, and then help that infiltrate using the insights into each aspect of your business, development, spending money, marketing, to everything, because it'll help us de-risk our next move across the board. And everybody needs a CX strategy from day dot. And just one other point, when it comes to CX strategies, developing a CX strategy, you can stand yourself out from 70% of other startups when going for VC investment by having a strategy in place on your deck and saying, hey, here's our strategy, put it in the data room. We have a CX strategy. This is what it is. This is how we interact with our customers. This is where we talk about our customers. This is how we use the insight. This is what we measure. And you look a hell of a lot more investable than person B next to you. And don't take that from me. The VCs have said that I partner with.
Thanks. I'm going to go to the questions, and we could talk about like what the unicorns are doing all day long. So, yeah. Rob.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for that. Really, really insightful, great chat, and very relevant to where I'm at now, which is why I shot my hand up dead early to get in first. So just a bit of context. I've worked in live events for 20 years across venues, worked with promoters, worked in festivals, and my proposition is a platonic matching service for people to go to live events together. So mainly music gigs, so based on your music preferences, you select an event you want to go to and I'll match someone up. So I feel like I've done quite well on that discovery stage around the consumer. So a lot of research up front with music fans and finding this was an issue for them. I then developed an MVP that I just ran through emails and websites. I've then now recently launched a mobile application. But my main pivot is really now looking to B2B to C. So looking at more at venues and promoters, because ultimately I'm not selling tickets. They're the ones that are going to commercially benefit from these extra tickets, the extra beer and burgers, the extra spend at the venues. So as I say, I've been very focused on that consumer discovery for the last 12 months, who's just getting some advice as to how I then move my mindset over. That's still really important because that's the heart of the network is the users and the members. But previously I was looking at a subs model for them, but I want to more switch out of that and look at the marketing revenue opportunities, B2B to C.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think interesting because you kind of answered your own question within there. You're in the right zone, because the B2B is a different market, right? So understanding the value that you drive to that B2B, whether that be more ticket sales, whether that be, I don't know what that might be, but having conversations with those businesses to find out what their pain points are. It could be the fact that their ticket sales people are horrific and they're getting a whole lot of fraudulent sales through their ticket sales, right? I don't know. But you can help that because you have a community of curated people who actually want to go with each other. And that might be an issue for them. So focusing down your question set to actually go and have a conversation with these businesses where I would definitely start. It is going to be a different value that you provide to the business, but understanding their problems. And the other thing I'd say about business to business is it's so difficult because everybody's approaching businesses with trying to, hey, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want that? It's like, ah. So if you pick out a potential core customer in a business market and you go and do some research onto company's house, go and look at their results, go and look at their marketing strategy, go and look at the adverts that they're putting out there about who they're targeting, and replay that back to them. In terms of that can then, you're then on the same level of talking the same language as them. And if you can talk the same language as them, then that's already broken down a barrier. And again, when it comes to connecting those conversations, look at other people that are working with them, and possibly go and speak to them, that sphere of influence. Go and speak to them. Hey, who did you have a conversation with in that business? How did you start working with them? And then that will then help you to have that conversation. And that's overcoming the initial barriers to having a conversation with that business, getting in, having that conversation, understanding the right questions to ask to get the right insight and level of insight that allows you to understand the value that you're going to provide and the solving of the needs of that business has, which will then help you curate that B2B element, which is then B2B to C, yes. But having those great conversations, I would start there. Hope that helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ed.
Thanks. Appreciate the talk. Really, really insightful. I had a question regarding CX, obviously, for more like B2B heavy businesses. So I have a banking as a service platform that helps Web3 businesses launch banking services to their users. So we effectively have a very small pool of customers, if you will. So right now we're tapping into the cryptocurrency wallet market, which is about 50 companies all in all. Our customers are actually CTOs, so the ones that make decisions for the underlying technology of the business. But the users are the users of our customers, if you will. Now we have had this process on Notion where we keep track of conversations with every individual customers, going from like first initial outreach to like second conversation, third, etc. However, obviously, due to the nature of our operation, we can't really use anything such as like Net Promoter Score or anything like that because we have a very few number of key contacts that we're actually in touch with. I was wondering if you had any more qualitative frameworks for assessing CX for specifically B2B businesses that have a long sales cycle, quite high ticket value. So yeah, just keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to take that last part, the sales cycle thing. Yes, you know, when you're dealing with enterprise, big banks, whatever that might be, it's a long sales cycle through all of their red tape and all of that. But I think measuring and understanding that journey and each of those milestones that you have to pass to actually get to a sale is really important. And that's where your CX strategy comes in, because they're still a customer, right? They're still going to utilize your platform to then deliver that to a whole load of other people. So the thing that I would be looking at is that customer journey and going, right, how long does it take us to get from conversation A, and what are the patterns in those conversations that lead us to that sale? Then I would go, right, that is our customer journey to 0 to 1, you know, that kind of, they're now onboarded and they're now showing us to all of their customers. That journey, how do I shorten that life cycle and that onboarding them? And that should be your focus within measuring and looking at that B2B business cycle and shortening the length of time that it takes to onboard somebody. Now, the value that you're driving is different, right? Because if you can shorten that, brilliant. You know, you've got a customer quicker. But also, if you can help solve their problems with onboarding with you, that also helps them. So if you find that you get part of the way down, you send them a contract, and then the contract says this clause, and you're finding that maybe 2 out of the 3 people that you're speaking to have pulled you up on that clause, right? Well, let's change that clause, and we can help them navigate the system more easily. The other thing I would say is that onboarding process. You'll have it down pat, right? You'll understand that, and then you can automate that. So plugging in a CX solution will help you that customer journey of onboarding that business, and helping them understand the life cycle, the journey to get to value. You can automate that and take out parts of it and understand which parts you can take out. That means you can get back to working on the business instead of in the business. So I would measure that. The other thing I would do, and this is a great use of AI. I'm a big fan of AI in the right way. But you can also, you'll have a whole load of customer conversations that you've got, and I'm talking about those business to business conversations that you're having. And if you were to plug all of those conversations into AI, ask it to run sentiment analysis, ask it to keyword search, common problems, anything that could for a question, you're already brilliant. So if you can pick out the insight from that, again, that's going to reduce that time to for that enterprise journey to bring them on board. Some of our biggest customers are banks and fintechs, only because they've got huge life cycle, they've got huge red tape elements. And if they can automate just 10% of it, then they're already helping their customer even better and even quicker, and solving their own needs. So I would look at that as your customer journey, and that is what you should be measuring, and that is what you should be solving when it comes to customer needs.
Thank you.
Thanks. Marco.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, Marco.
Amazing session again. Yeah, I was just wondering, because I'm in the middle of this fundraising journey. How would you apply? Could you apply this kind of CX strategy lessons and measurements, etc., to fundraising? To essentially, because you know you were selling your company to your funders, really, right? So
Yeah. Okay, so the way I've seen it used before, and I am going to use the example of Zendesk because why not? So Zendesk has two parts to it. It has the CRM system and then the customer service suite. So if I take the CRM system first, managing your investor pipeline, having the conversations, you can understand where they are in any journey, pipeline them, milestone them, and make sure that you know what conversation you're having with each of those individual investors, warming up that relationship. So I would have them, and then you can kind of segment them and go, hey, these are really interactive with me, these are not. I need to send this person an update, stick a task in, and you can manage your whole investor pipeline on that side. Cool. On the other side of things, with your customer service suite, what you could actually have is a gated data room. So if they come in through your web chat, they're an investor, they want to come in, they want to speak to you, or they come in via email, you can actually point them in the direction of your data room and any investor docs that you might have, and that almost reduces the amount of time you need to spend on it. They can then answer their question and get back, and off they go. So there's a bit of on either side. Now, when I was talking about investment strategies using CX, if you can demonstrate to an investor that you know your customer, that you know their journey, you know where they hang out, you know where you can intersect them and add some value, you've segmented your user group and your customers, and this is how you market to them differently. These are the promoter scores. This is what people are saying to us about us. And if you can collate that in a way that's on a one slide, your investor's going to be super impressed because it shows traction in a different way to saying we've got 5 customers, we've got 10 customers, we've got letters of intent. So being able to distill that down into insight for an investor will help you get over the line quicker and get on that investment table. I hope that kind of helps.
Yeah, it helps. I was actually asking the first bit, but this second bit actually helps as well. I had this question as well, but yeah,
cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marco.
Jeremy, the question that's just come in on the chat, and everyone else, if you're already using something for your data room, feel free to put it on there. Do you have any advice for which is the best place to build your data room?
I'm only gonna answer this from the point of view of the investor. So I would understand what your investor wants to where your investor wants to see your data room. A lot of investors use Notion, so Notion could be a great place to start your data room. It could be, as somebody's put in here, Darren's put seed legals. Great, because they've probably got the components of what you need in your data room. As long as it is easily accessible, easily digestible, clickable and downloadable. And the other thing is, when it comes to your financials within your data room, an investor wants to be able to go and break them. They want to be able to move the dials on each of your key metrics, whether that be, okay, so if I move if I can change it and increase the revenue, what does that do to your profit? If we increase the people costs, then what happens there? So whenever you're putting your financials into a data room, make sure that they are usable and play aroundable with by an investor, because they'll want to dial it up, dial it down, and see where an investment lands and where it's going to be used. So in terms of the platform, I would be informed at what platform that would be on by the investor that you're going to. But as a starter, just make sure that it is easily accessible, easily editable, and easily sendable as well, because you're going to have to send this to a few investors to get that over the line.
Awesome. 2 more questions. One I might actually answer myself. So first question, what is the one, if you wanted everyone to just remember one thing from everything that you've just said today, what do you think that one takeaway should be?
I think the one takeaway for me would be, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, whatever you're building, put the customer at the heart of it, whether that be a potential customer or customers you already have. Learn from them, get insight from them, measure their journeys, and that will help you build whatever you are building. Spend money on whatever you're spending money on, and de-risk your next move. So create a customer-centric business. Yeah,
that sounds great. And then I'm gonna just stop recording. And as Jeremy mentioned at the beginning, this is absolutely not a sales pitch, but whilst we've got people on the call, It might be good just to run through what the offer is and
Yeah.
how you can claim it. So I'll stop recording so it doesn't go live on YouTube and it's just for this group.